You should quit hiking right now. Hey everybody, my name's Melissa the Unlikely Hiker. I hope everyone is doing really good today. Cutting short or quitting your backpacking trip can be a really hard decision, especially when you've put so much effort into planning that trip, and it can definitely make you feel like you failed. That being said, continuing your hike under certain circumstances could actually put you in harm's way, especially when that reward of accomplishment is threatened. But pushing through the suck of backpacking, that's part of it, right? Or is it? That's what we're going to talk about today. When to push through that suck and when not to. It's absolutely a good thing to push yourself past your comfort zone and to challenge yourself. This is how we grow as people. So I'm not saying that at the smallest sign of discomfort or blister or injury, you should bail, but you need to think about critically what's going on with yourself and is it safe to continue. I've got 6 examples of why you really should consider quitting your hike early. The first is injury. Some injuries that would cause you to stop your hike or turn around could be blisters, burns, severe lacerations, sprains or strains, cramping that won't go away, or pain that is excessive beyond what you would expect. By continuing with an injury, you're putting yourself and your hiking partners, if you have any, at risk. You're also putting yourself at risk to make that injury far worse than it is. It's best to analyze your situation if you're injured and decide if it's safe to proceed forward, or should you either call for help or head back. Another reason is illness. You could have significant stomach or GI issues, fever, any physical symptoms that you know are not normal for you, or a general feeling of being unwell. I know that sounds really generic, but I think most people do understand, like, when something isn't right, something is wrong. You could have a medical emergency brewing, and pushing forward could in fact end in disaster. The third reason is environment. This could include temperature extremes, lack of water, severe or life-threatening weather or terrain, and water crossings that exceed what your expectations were or your ability level. If you're not comfortable doing a water crossing, don't do it. Severe weather, getting stuck above tree line, sometimes you just need to turn around. If the temperature is too hot and you're not sure where your next water source is, or if the temperature is too cold and you're at risk for hypothermia and frostbite, just don't move forward. It's time to pack it in, turn around, and go back before a bad situation gets even worse. Fourth reason is gear failure. This could be just about anything. You could have a failure in your footwear, your clothing, your sleep system, your tent. There's so many things that could go wrong, and most of us only carry a small repair kit. There's only so many things that you can take care of out on the trail, and you might need to turn around if you have a gear failure. The fifth reason is kind of a catch-all, and it sort of includes some of the other categories, and that's just general unpreparedness. You know, if you're expecting this and this is what you got and you just weren't prepared for it, it could be mental, it could be weather-related unpreparedness, it could be anything, but just not being prepared for what's in front of you. That's just going to cause you to not be having any fun, which is the sixth reason, mood. You're just not feeling it, and that's okay. We all have good days and bad days. No one's going to blame you. But if you're not feeling it, you're not having a good time, why are you putting yourself through that much suck? Turn around, go home, plan for another trip, plan for another day, learn some lessons along the way, and then the next trip, hopefully you won't repeat those. I've had several instances of having to turn around. When I hiked Armstrong a few years ago, I got about 2 miles in when I realized I forgot my Garmin in my car. So I had to turn around, double back another 2 miles, and then ahead, obviously the same 2 miles, and then continue on my hike. Ordinarily, that wouldn't be that much of a deal breaker. However, I was in fact only out for a day hike, and it was winter. So the problem with that is I lost more than an hour doubling back to my car and then back to where I was to get my Garmin. I could have completely ended the hike at that point because I had to go back for my Garmin and just say, okay, it didn't work. But there was a reasonable chance that I had enough time to make it to the summit, and I have a hard turnaround time when I'm solo hiking in the winter, or a hard turnaround time even if I'm group winter hiking. So I made it as close as a half mile to the summit, and I did in fact have to turn around. It was a painful choice, but it was absolutely the right choice. I did hike out in the dark, but at least I was hiking out in the dark on a flat gravel road. So that was the smart choice, even though it hurt. Another time that I had to turn around and should have turned around sooner was when I did a winter hike up Dix Mountain. I was pretty prepared on this trip, and I did bring extra clothes and layers that I left in a lean-to because I figured I would get pretty sweaty and I wanted some dry, warm clothes to change into for the last 3 miles out, and put everything there, continued up. It was a bitter cold day. I missed the trail sign and I ended up sending it right up the slides, which was the wrong way. Ended up partially, one leg was in a tree well, and I didn't think I was going to get out of there without having to call for a rescue. Thankfully, I did get out unscathed, and then I found the correct trail after butt sliding down the slides. Okay, that was a little fun. I was very close to the summit, but there was absolutely no way for me to get to the trail, which was above me. So I had to turn around, do that epic butt slide, only to be disastrously disappointed because I couldn't see the trail sign that was kind of on the wrong side of the tree-ish. Anyway, that was a really tough hike. I expended way too much energy. I was utterly exhausted. Thankfully, I did have those dry clothes to put on, so that was good. I did have a meltdown almost at the end of that trail, and I just dropped to my knees and I was sobbing because I was so exhausted and cold and over it. And that's okay. I gave myself my little pity party, and then I finished and I got to my car, and that was it. Back in 2015, when I was finishing up the Adirondack 46, I had a couple very soaking wet, sucky days in the Seward Range. I did 3 of them solo one day, and then met up with some friends, and we did the last one on the second day. And then I drove out, and my plan was to do Marshall, Cliff, Redfield, Skylight, and Gray in the following subsequent days. Hiking the Seward Range in the rain, I call them the sewers because it sucked so bad. It was so wet and so muddy. I had the worst time ever. I wasn't injured. It wasn't beyond my capacity. It just sucked because of the weather. This was something I decided to push through. I slept in my car that night sobbing because I did not want to hike anymore that week. But I was kind of running out of time. I really wanted to finish the 46 before fall or by fall, and I didn't have a lot more time left. I did an inventory on myself. Like I said, I wasn't injured. There was nothing going wrong. The only gear failure I had is I accidentally grabbed my chair instead of my sleeping pad, so that definitely sucked, but it was warm enough out that it wasn't that big of a deal. I was a little chilly, but I did go back out into the woods, and then it was just a sufferfest without a sleeping pad. Yeah, that's a good story. But I finished those mountains and I felt good afterwards. And I had the good, cool story that instead of grabbing my sleeping pad, I grabbed my chair, which was totally not helpful. So that was an instance where pushing myself was the right choice because there was nothing really wrong. It was a mental block that I needed to process and I needed to move through to prove to myself that I could do it. So as you can see, there are valid reasons not to push through a situation, and there's valid reasons to push through a situation. Only you can be the judge of that, but don't let pride get in the way of your safety. Hiking is more mental than it is physical, and sometimes it's okay to push through that mental block, but pushing through a physical block could put you in harm's way, your hiking partners in harm's way, and it could absolutely end in disaster. The big takeaway here is learn how to effectively analyze what's going on with you here, and make a decision that is responsible in the backcountry. Because, yeah, peak bagging is great, and that's a lot of what we do around here, but it can also be very dangerous to kind of get the mentality that you have to finish, because you don't. There is always next week. It does not have to be done today. And your safety is more important. And that's what I care about. I care about your safety. It's difficult to find videos about failures. I actually did make a couple, but it's just not something that we really talk about. And I wanted to, because I wanted to make sure that all of you understood it's okay not to finish a hike. It's totally fine. And I support your decision no matter what. That's what I have for you today. I hope you got some value out of this. If you did like it, go ahead, share it, comment, give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good day. See you on the trail. Bye-bye.